Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 5:32 p.m. Let's jump into roll call. Eric Bennett.
Here.
Haley Bergeron. Joey Bryant.
Here.
Maddie Crowell.
Here.
Julia Felici.
Here.
Shelby Hamblin.
Here.
Alex Horning.
Here.
Dr. Martin Kennedy.
Here.
Lacey Lampkins.
Here.
Stephanie Trachel.
Here.
Trachel.
Tretchell.
Renee Skiles.
Here.
Patrick Stanton.
Here.
Jeanette Webster. Right. Moving into the approval of this week's agenda, could you all give that a quick look over? I'd like to entertain a motion to approve this week's agenda.
So moved.
Eric moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Shelby seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Moving into the approval of last week's minutes. You guys could all look over that real quick. Thank you.
These are very impressive minutes.
There.
No, like, these are the best I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve last week's minutes.
So moved.
Alex moves.
Second.
Jeanette seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Moving into reports. I don't have any reports.
I was just going to report that there is $95,655 left in the supplemental budget to date.
Thank you. Moving into section 6, public comment first call. Is there any public comment at this time?
Am I allowed to add something?
Yes, Alex.
Oh, you want to go first? So I just wanted to bring people up to date with kind of student government, what was going on with us. We had an impromptu executive meeting today called by our president. One of the topics of conversation was the $92,000 that was allocated last year. The official
Last week.
Whew, long day, longer year. But no, last week, I apologize for that. And essentially, the long and short of it is student government loves the opportunity. They love the music department. They love all the individuals involved. However, they believe that $92,000 for one department, any one department, doesn't matter which one it is a little bit too much. So they just wanted to make sure that I conveyed that to the rest of the board. Not saying there's anything wrong with the board. They're not saying anything negative about any individuals involved. It is simply just that student government believes that $92,000 out of a $200,000 budget is too much for one department when there are so many other opportunities for the rest of the year. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, I just want to make it known that no one should feel here on this committee that they can't express an opinion that may be different or the same as someone else's. And I would hope that we all here on this committee can respect everybody's comments, opinions, and such when we're in discussion on funding of all of the valued and valid requests that come before us.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment at this time?
Just for point in response to those two. One, I apologize I was not here last week. Again, you all are going to have a lot of tough decisions and conversations to be had. And again, you're not always going to agree. That's the point of the committee. So it is important that you all feel comfortable sharing your opinions and that everyone is open and receptive to that. To Alex's, just so everyone's aware, the process is, it's already been approved by S&A at this point. So Alex's job is to represent student government, to share back and forth as liaison. It will go before the Budget Executive Committee for vote next, in which student government also has a representative on that committee who will be able to share the concerns at that point, but it won't come back.
That's a slightly different timeline than I think everyone was believing at the last meeting. I think the impression we had is that might get forwarded to the Board of Trustees for their meeting tomorrow, and it won't. So there'll be. Okay,
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. It'll be for a Budget Executive Committee on Tuesday the 14th.
Yeah. then the trustees at some point after that.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Will it then go to the Board of Trustees meeting in February?
There will most likely be, we don't know for certain, but based on talking with our vice president, there's going to be most likely a telephonic meeting beforehand, in which case it'll be on that agenda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's not a set date for it yet, though, so it'll be before that.
Is there any further public comment at this time?
Oh, you are hidden in the middle. Yes, your public comment now.
Great, awesome.
You were hidden in the middle, so I was like,
You're glad to
yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Rosenberry, and I serve as the Executive Director of Student Involvement. Today is my first day at Central as a full-time employee. Thank you. I am an alum. I graduated here in 2007 and spent 2 years on student government as the Vice President for Student Life and Facilities. So I understand just how impactful the work that you are doing is as an S&A committee, and certainly appreciate the time and energy that you are putting into this. For those of you who are here requesting funds, kudos to you. It is daunting and it is intimidating to get up in front of people and ask for money, but your causes are rich and your heart is pure, I'm sure, so good luck to you tonight and in the future. Lacey and Joey are amazing advisors. I am simply here to better understand S&A and how things are working now as compared to a decade ago, and look forward to continue to get to know you all as my days continue here at Central. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment at this time? Seeing none, moving into section 7, old business. Seeing none, moving into section 8, new business, subsection A, supplemental funding request presentation 1810, the ESC block party t-shirts in the amount of $1,413.
Can I stand up here? Well, good evening. Just want to thank all of you for taking the time to come and listen to me. Not that you didn't have a choice, but moving on. My name is Alex Cheeseman. I am the Executive Assistant to the Equity and Services Council, and tonight I'll be presenting our fund request for the Equity and Services Council Block Party t-shirts. So moving on, Equity and Services Council, we go by the ESC. We are a department in student government consisting of 9 organizations. Our goal is to provide an environment that fosters student diversity, promotes community service, and also promotes student equity. Our 9 organizations are EQUAL, which stands for Equality Through Queers and Allies. This serves the students of Central Washington University that identify in the LGBTQIA+ community. We have ABLE, which serves students who have disabilities or students who are interested in helping that cause. AUAP, which is an Asia University America program, where students from Tokyo, Japan come over to Central Washington University to study in an exchange program. We have the BSU, which is the Black Student Union. We have the CSA, or the Chehomalon Student Association, which serves the Native American population here at CWU. We have FASA, which is the Filipino American Student Association. FGSO, the First Generation Student Organization. MECHA, which serves the Latinx community here at Central Washington University, and Polycentral, which serves the Polynesian community here at Central. The event that we put on is our annual block party. And what that was a chance for each ESC organization to get out and promote themselves, to educate the students of Central Washington University about who they are, what they stand for, how students can get involved if they are interested. The event took place September 22nd, which was a Friday. It took place on the Japanese Garden Lawn, which is right by the Cirque, from about 3 to 5 p.m. And so students, when they arrived, they got a card that looked like this. It's a little bingo card. So what they would do is they go up to each of the 9 tables, and they would hear the spiel that the organizations gave about who they are, who they serve, what they're about, kind of their mission statement, and then how they can get involved. And so if you see the bottom left, here's a bingo card that's partially filled out. Say the top left is BSU, so I'll go up to BSU's table, hey, how's it going? I'll get their spiel about who they are, who they serve, how I can get involved. I'll get a check mark or a signature, then I go on to the next organization. So on until all nine are filled out. And then I can turn this in exchange for a food ticket. We had a cultural food catered to the event and our free t-shirt. So we actually had over 400 students show up to this event, which is pretty exciting for us. Students got to talk to each organization to hear everything and be well informed about what they are. The ESC handed out 150 t-shirts, which is great, but it's also a problem because we had so many more students who were desiring t-shirts. So after we ran out of t-shirts to give out, we had a sign-up sheet where students could list their name, their CWU email, and their t-shirt size. And so we promised to get back to them if we had t-shirts for them. So the shirt itself, I'm actually wearing one, excuse me. It says, I inspire persistence. And yes, I know my advisor gave me flack for putting myself on the PowerPoint, but we're going to work past that. So it says, I inspire persistence. Persistence, according to the dictionary, is a firm continuance in a course of action in spite of difficulty or opposition. So we know at the ESC we're serving marginalized communities. These students come from homes that maybe are a tight financial situation, and going away to college is seen as a selfish action. Why are you going away to study, to spend all this money when you could be helping us here at home? Or say a student, the first generation student, they have anybody to guide them or give them tips on what to do, how to study, what to avoid here at college. So persistence is a big part of who we are at ESC. We know the environments that our students come from aren't always the best, so we like to say, hey, we give you a community where you belong, where you're going to be poured into, where you're going to succeed, and let you know that we are on your side. So that is a shirt. Also, on the back, I don't mean to not face you, but we have a list of 9 organizations, the ones I listed in the previous slide. Excuse me. And I just think it's cool to have publicity for our 9 organizations. I've talked to students on campus who identify in the Latinx community or the African American community, and they're involved, they're wanting to grow up and defy the stereotypes associated with their ethnicities. But I asked them about, hey, do you know about Mitchell, do you know about BSU? And they actually don't know. So I thought that was kind of shocking. Obviously, I work in ESC, so I know all about organizations and what they do. But having publicity can have a way for students to get familiar with who our organizations are, how they can get involved. And if we think it's worth it at the ESC if students get familiar with what they are, they pursue it, and their life has changed, and that's totally worth it to us. So getting publicity is a good thing. Why this matters. I have 2 figures up here. On the right, we have the ethnic diversity, the demographics for here at Central Washington University, and on the left is the state of Washington itself. I'll give you a minute to look over those. Looking at these 2 graphics, we see that Central Washington University actually fosters a more diverse environment than the state itself. That is a really good thing. That's awesome. And so our line of thinking is if we're doing something good, we want to keep doing it. We don't want to stop. We don't want to regress. Yes, they're just t-shirts, but there's so much more. They're a reminder to persist. They're publicity for our ESC organizations, and they're important. I can say in the simplest. And so what we're asking for is the funds to cover the 137 extra t-shirts that students signed up for at the ESC block party. These students, they got one of these, they went around to all of our organizations, to BSU, Equal, FOSSA, FGSO, etc. They learned all about them. They're aware, and they are able to involve themselves if they so are interested. And then, so they did the work, and we want to hold up our end of the deal. So we're requesting over $1,400 from the S&A supplemental budget. Each t-shirt costs around $9.53 plus tax. We came up to $1,400. And on the right, you see a picture of the Filipino dance, cultural dance that was at the ESC block party. And on the left, I actually used my snipping tool and took this from the Central Washington homepage. So if you go to CWU, the homepage, you go to the welcome. They have a whole bunch of facts. And it's hard to read, so I'll read it for you. It says, everyone is welcome. Campus Pride selected CWU as one of the top LGBT-friendly schools in the nation. We're the only 4-year university in the state to receive the Higher Education Excellence in Diversity Award from the Inside Diversity. That's pretty cool. So obviously Central, we're proud of that. We acknowledge we are a diverse campus. We want to promote that. And so we're talking the talk, and I hope that we can provide this funding and take a practical step to helping us walk the walk as a university. Thank you, and open for questions of you.
Yeah. Are there any questions for our presenter?
Yes.
So I noticed that you're working with a lot of organizations on campus and they have club accounts.
You do.
You're not open to the option of asking them to fund some of the money for the t-shirts that who are part of the block party?
Not right away. So we do allocate around $3,500 to each of our organizations. Our hope is that they'll use that to either put events on, to order food or order the spaces. We don't need to pay for spaces, but to promote themselves, to celebrate their culture, stuff like that. We have FGSOs going to the Students of Color Conference, and we think that's a great way to use their funds, and we don't want to have to take away from them at first.
Are there any further questions for our presenter? Yes.
How do the t-shirts themselves actually help the students
So as I was
rather than the
saying,
block party?
the publicity for the clubs also gives them incentive to come back and to participate and to further make us familiar in the minds of our Central Washington students. So if I'm wearing a t-shirt, hey, where'd you get that t-shirt? Oh, it's at the block party. Or if I'm walking behind someone and I see the list of clubs, let's say I'm Filipino and I see, oh, FASA, I wonder what that is. Maybe I can investigate that more. So providing publicity to our clubs and also offering incentive for them to come back to our events in the future.
Do you have stats on how many people have contacted you or joined the organizations?
Not at the moment, but I could grab those if you wanted them.
Just interested. Thank you.
Eric?
Based on historical data from previous block parties, how did you determine how many t-shirts to have at the event for this year?
How did we come up with the 150?
So you decided to have 150 t-shirts for this year, and that's based on attendance in previous years?
Jeff?
Oh, I was actually going to say the block party actually started last year.
Oh, was it just last year? Okay,
Yes. So
okay.
in terms of historical context, there's a very limited amount of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not to answer for you. I apologize.
No,
for
no,
this.
I thought it had gone on longer.
You would think so based on the attendance, though.
Are there any further questions?
I have one for you, Joey.
Sure. I like that you had to decide between the two.
Well, I was
I'm
I
kind of concerned what question it is now.
Since this is after the fact,
Yep.
is it germane for us to possibly fund something like that?
So they haven't actually ordered the additional 137 t-shirts yet.
Okay.
So it is after the event, but they actually haven't purchased what they're asking
Okay.
for yet.
Thank you.
Yep. And this one we'd already run by the Dean of Student Success, who oversees that area, to make sure there's approval and things beforehand too. So.
Are there any further questions? Thank you. We'll vote on this
Thank
next
you.
week. Moving on to supplemental funding request presentation 1809, the National Council on Family Relations Annual Conference in the amount of $2,898.48. The opinions present and the
You should be able to.
They see that's something that you know, so this is
11 and 12.
So my name is Deidre Dudney. I'm the president of the Family and Child Life Graduate Club. I'm a graduate teaching assistant here on campus, and I'm student ambassador of the Family and Consumer Sciences Department in the Family and Child Life program.
My name is Curtis Kelly, and I'm the vice president of the club.
And we're here today to talk to you guys about our annual conference. It's taking place in Orlando, Florida this year, so it is pretty pricey. So we're hoping you guys can help us to fund this trip. There's 9 of us students that are going, 5 graduate students, and 4 seniors. And this is basically our biggest conference of the year, so we're going to tell you all about it and see if you guys can help us out. So what we do, we have a few different clubs on campus. We have a Family and Child Life Graduate Club that me and Curtis are a part of. And we fundraise all year. We do things like currently we're providing, we're making crafts for the Wear Fair. We're selling t-shirts. We just are heavily involved as much as we can in the community. So we are constantly fundraising, but all of this money that we're able to make, we're putting it into our service projects. So we just, last week, did a Community Connect Day here down at the library, the Howe Home Center. And we provide clothing for families in need. Here we're at the Teddy Bear Clinic like a week ago at the Kittitas Valley Hospital. We just try to get our students involved as much as possible. but that's where most of our fundraising goes, so we currently don't have as much money in our accounts that we would previously.
So NCFR is our national conference, and what they do is they certify us when we graduate too, and we hope to work for them in professions after we graduate in fields of family and child life, whether it's counseling or working with kids in hospitals or marriage counseling or any type like that. And this is their main conference of the year. They have smaller conferences each year in Portland that we go to, but this is the one where all of the professionals will attend, and you can talk with people about doctoral programs, and undergrads can talk about master's programs around the country as well.
So just like he was talking about the people that we get to meet, there are so many different fields in family and child life. You can do social work, you can do therapy, counseling, anything. There's so many different paths that this conference is a beautiful way to get all of these people in one place at one time. There's 4 days where we have all of these opportunities to introduce ourselves and get our names out there and just see how many people we can meet, how many people we can impress, and come back with just some great information. So it's really amazing how many different people come to this one event every year.
And so the conference is 4 days. It's from November 15th to the 18th. We'll be staying 4 nights in Orlando. And the main theme of the conference is diversity. And the main draw is all the different workshops they offer. So if you were interested in sexual research and how to help further in that field, there's so many different workshops on that. If you're interested in child trauma therapy, there's a lot of workshops on that. So you can really gear towards what you want to work for. And so all 9 of us that are going may not even attend the same workshops. And we can all go to different workshops and collaborate with what we learn.
So there are a ton of student benefits from going to conferences. You guys probably hear this all the time. But our major one is professional development. Having opportunities to go introduce ourselves and meet professionals in the field, where we'll be doing these types of things a year from now, 10 years from now, we will be these higher up positions. It's just so great to meet these professionals and to really build our skills. There's a speed mentoring program every single year at the conferences where you're able to get one-on-one time with different mentors. There's, like Curtis was saying, there's so many different workshops where you are there to build up your resume and to really understand research that's fascinating to you. Because there's so much research coming together at one event, there's just everything tailored to every single different individual. All 9 of us that are going are very diverse. Just like Alex was saying, there's so much diversity here at Central. It's just amazing how all 9 of us are such different individuals, and there's so much for every single one of us. There's also personal growth. I think it's really important for programs here at Central to be involved with each other. So it's a great opportunity for us to work together and just get out there, house name, and just really form a team throughout our community and of the Family and Child Life program.
So at the conference, we're going to go to poster sessions as well, where people will present their research that they've been conducting. Right now in our classes, we're conducting our own research too. We won't be presenting it because we're still conducting our research this quarter, but we're going to be able to see how professionals present their research, how they've conducted it, and we're going to be able to go back and use those skills that we learned and conduct better research and be able to display our research better to people in professions. And we're going to get tips from people in doctoral programs and how to achieve that and how to conduct research that would look better trying to apply for a doctoral program, and how to convey that research better to your peers.
Another thing, there's so many different practices there. There's going to be instructors at different universities. There's going to be actual doctors. There's so many different people in this field. I'm currently a teaching assistant, like I mentioned. I teach human sexuality here on campus. And so it's really great to get that research and get that experience looking at someone else who is a much better presenter than I will ever be, and to be able to collaborate just to do the best we can and bring it back to our students so I can do a better job teaching my class every single quarter. Along with that, there's also a graduate program meet and greet essentially. So there are 5 graduate students going, like I mentioned, but we all potentially could be looking at doctorate programs. Iowa State has one of the best in the country. Texas Tech, just incredible doctorate programs that we can get out there, and rather just being a piece of paper they see on their desk a year from now, they say, oh, I think I met that girl one time at this one thing. So this is just a really great opportunity for us to say, put a name with a face, not just be a name on a piece of paper.
And so when we get back from the conference, not only will we be able to discuss what we learned in our clubs and in our meetings, but as a class too, throughout our classes we can collaborate with our other peers and what we learned and how to present better research and how to build better research too.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts about going to conferences, I think, is that you have so much information that you just take in such a short amount of time. So what we do in the Family and Child Life program that past students have done is we put a huge bulletin board up in our hallways in Michelson, and we just have like a summary of all this different workshops that we've gone to. So if I go sit in on something about child life, if I hear about a current practice in hospitals on child life, I will have the opportunity to write a paragraph and share that with my classmates. I will go to my club meeting the next week and be able to share all of this stuff that I've learned crammed into 4 days and spread it throughout the rest of our year and the rest of our future teaching here at Central. So it's pretty cool. It's amazing what 4 days can do for somebody. In order to choose who got to go, we kind of went with who could potentially afford it currently, because we're only asking for reimbursement. Like I said, 5 graduates, 4 seniors. So we're not just letting random people say, oh, I want to go. It sounds fun to go to Florida this week. It's all of us who are really looking to go to doctorate programs, who are looking for different master's programs. Our 4 seniors are very heavily involved in the clubs. We are very heavily involved in the clubs. We've been trying to make this better community and better program for the past 4 years, 5 years for some of us. So it's just wonderful to get a chance for us to actually get out there and potentially, not that I'd ever want to leave Central, but potentially move on from Central. So it's just amazing. These 9 people that we have selected are very involved and they deserve to go, for sure. So for the costs, it's going to Orlando, Florida, so obviously it's going to be expensive. But we are staying at 2 separate hotels. We're not staying at the conference hotel because those are normally much more expensive. So we got hotels, Days Inn and Clarion Inn, that are much more affordable than the Rosen Center that we're actually, the conference is at, but it's within walking distance, so we don't have to worry about paying for a taxi to get there every time or something. So we have 9 of us, we have 5 people in one room and 4 people in another. We actually found a 5-person room, which is amazing. So we can save costs rather than doing 3 different hotel rooms. So that was a lifesaver. So these are just the costs for the 2 different rooms. Yeah, we're only staying at 2. And then the basic registration, normally the conference is $275 each person, but we were able to apply early enough. We all got our registration completed early before the early bird special or something. And we also applied for NCFR membership, so then it ended up only being $220 per person. So we saved over $50 each person just in registration fees, which is amazing. And then transportation is obviously the most expensive. The flights from SeaTac all the way down to Orlando. We all are flying in the middle of the night. We're actually all leaving at midnight the night before the conference and gonna get there in the middle of the day, missing part of the first day of the conference, just because it's much more affordable than trying to go the day before and have the best flight in first class. So we did luck out essentially, and we used all these different websites trying to find the cheapest possible flight. So we will all be cramming on some good ones at 2 o'clock in the morning to save money there. And then we also are asking for money for our personal vehicles, just getting us to SeaTac. It's the CWU estimate on costs for gas. And then parking at the airport is super expensive, so we're parking at a different garage that's actually a couple blocks away from SeaTac, but it's only $11 a day rather than like $30 a day. And then the airport shuttle, when we are in Orlando, we're gonna be paying for all of our own personal things, like going out for dinner and whatnot. But in order to get from the airport to the hotel and to the hotel at the airport with our 2 different groups of people, it'll be about $30 per trip, so that's $120 also. But yeah, so there's these 3 major categories that we're asking for. Any personal expenses, like I'm saying, going out for dinner, all of our food expenses, things like that, we will obviously be paying out of pocket. So it's just these 3 major classifications that are big chunks of money that we're hoping to get funding for. So our total cost for the trip with all 9 people is about $7,000, which is $700 a person, almost $800, which I thought was incredibly expensive, but at the same time, it's to go to Orlando, Florida for this amazing conference, so it's really not that expensive when you look at it. We have already presented at both S&A, and both of our clubs have presented at Club Senate. We have already got $4,200, which is incredible. We've been very fortunate. So all we're asking from you guys today is not even $3,000 to cover the rest of our expenses in just those 3 categories of the hotel, the transportation, and registration.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you guys have any questions?
Are there any questions? Yes, Stephanie?
I have a clarification question. On your sheet, so you're asking for the almost $3,000, and then the funding support. You already took out the Club Senate and Career Services that were only requested, or did you get those approved?
We did get those approved,
Oh.
yes. So at the time, there was one of them that the club, we hadn't got approved yet, but currently, we just presented last week, so now we're good. We have all $4,200.
Awesome.
We don't have the career services money though.
Yeah, that, we didn't, yeah. But the $4,200, there's Club Senate and Academic Senate.
And so you
Not
haven't.
Career Services.
They have 24, they don't have 300.
Alex?
Yeah, so there's a $300 career services fee on there. We requested from them, but the person hasn't gotten back to us, and it's been a couple weeks. So we're not really sure if that $300 is coming, so we didn't include it in this.
And you requested from Bruce, right? Simpson over at Career Services?
Yes, and I think he's at a town.
Yeah, he's actually, sorry, totally off topic. He's working with the hurricanes and trying to work on some more there.
Yeah,
So he's
so
off busy.
this $300 isn't important right now, so that's why we didn't include it in this.
So to my actual question, sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent, but you briefly mentioned something about certification that you could potentially get out of this conference. Is that a direct result of the conference, or is the organization putting on the conference the one that will certify you later on? All right. And then second question is, out of something like this, like obviously it's a great networking tool, and you showed pictures, I'm assuming, of going to this conference previously. Yeah. Has there been any job offers or any graduate programs that have come out of this, and can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, we actually have 2 students currently at Iowa State. Is that correct?
There's 3 students that ended up at Iowa State, and one of them's done, and 2 are still working on their PhD.
Yeah, so 2 of them are currently working on their doctorate at Iowa State. It's a great program, not just them, but there's so many other ones. So we do continuously see Central students being pulled in by these because we have a great presence. We are one of the only Pacific Northwest universities that offers a program like this, and we're the most well-known, so I think that's just amazing. So they do love to see our students for sure.
Fantastic. By the way, congratulations on all the other funding sources. That's quite impressive. We haven't seen a whole lot of that.
We've done a lot of paperwork, and it's been wonderful. Yeah.
So you mentioned where, in addition to other funding sources, T-shirt sales.
Oh, so that was just our fundraising. So what
Okay.
we've done a ton of different things like the Krispy Kreme fundraisers and things like that. But we design T-shirts every quarter, or every year actually. Each of our clubs does. So throughout the year, there's going to be about 3 different T-shirts that we sell. And the profits that we get from those, we just upcharge them. And the profits we get go to our service projects. So that's other funding that we've collected over the course of the last few years.
Yes.
And to go off of Shelby, so those funds in your club account you won't be touching because those will go to different service projects?
Yeah, so we just actually in the past week we've done Community Connect Day, we've done a teddy bear clinic, and we just did Booth Central. So everything like that within the last week we're out at this point. Yeah.
Are there any further questions to our presenters?
Thank you.
Thank
We'll be
you.
doing this next week.
Moving on to supplemental funding request presentation 1811, the Swing Cats general meeting in the amount of $700.
Hello everyone, my name's Ted and I'm the president of Swing Cats.
I'm the vice president, I'm Caitlin Daniel.
Yeah. So what we're asking for is $700 to, we hire an instructor that comes and teaches every Monday, and we are asking $700 to help supplement that so that we can have money. So that when we do our big fundraiser, which every quarter we try and do a large dance, where we ideally want to either work with the big Ellensburg Big Band or Gen, which is the on-campus jazz club. I don't remember what their acronym stands for, unfortunately. So we're asking for $700 to pay for the first set of lessons. We teach 2 sets. The reason we're asking $700 from you guys is ideally in a quarter we want to pay him $1,200 because he wants it to be profitable for him. And what we were doing in the past was just paying for his gas. And since he's contracting with us, he's basically contracting with us. It's totally fair for him to want to make a profit out of this. So we're asking 700. I said that we want to pay him 1,200. We're also going to ask Senate to help us with the second set of lessons, which we're going to present at the next Senate meeting, I believe.
Which is why that the Senate fund was not on this form, just because we're doing the first set right now.
So the second set, we are asking 500 from the Senate because we can only ask for a cap of, I think it's $2,000 in the entire academic year. So if we split it, we tried and split it, the math got a little weird for figuring out how to price everything and things like that. Because the first set has an extra week, so it's 5 weeks in the first set. So a little bit about the club. The club has been going on since before I came to school, since before Chris, our current instructor, started teaching there. Swing Cats was going long before that. The dates I've gotten consistently are mid-90s is how long Swing Cats has been going on. Last year, I came and presented you guys last year at the end of the year. And we were struggling with our membership, but this year we actually bolstered to quite a bit, where we have about 20 to 30 active members, but on paper we have 40 plus. There's like 10 to 20 that we don't see anymore, but they signed the name saying they won't sue us, so that's good. So, fundraisers that we've done, like I said, our big one that we're planning right now is Yule Ball, where I am currently trying to talk to Jen, the club I mentioned, the jazz club, and hoping that they'll perform for us. In the past, they asked for $100, I think, to perform for 3 hours. The big band, which is what we like, we love partnering with the big band because they're amazing, but they're a lot more expensive at like $500. And at the moment, we aren't comfortable doing that. Our account is, we have about $1,000 in our account, a little bit over than that. But if either you guys don't approve or Senate doesn't approve, then we couldn't pay the big band. And if we already, because we're talking to them now for December 1st, if we said, hey, come play for us and we'll pay you $500, and we don't have that $500, it leads to a really awkward situation.
We were just getting back on our feet. Last year was a big struggle for us. We were finally getting the members again and getting that income again. So probably by the end of this year, if we keep getting this income, we could probably afford the big band as well as being able to do a big dance like that. But currently this quarter, we cannot afford that. So we were trying to do Gen and get this reimbursement put through.
So we talked a little bit about our income is coming back stronger this year. What that looks like is, so we offer lessons on Mondays, like I mentioned, and it is $4 per individual per night to come to our lessons, or $10 for the set, which is 4 or 5 weeks, depending on if you come at the beginning of the quarter or the end of the quarter, or $20 for the entire quarter.
Which is 2 cents.
Yeah. So the best bang for your buck is the 10 or 20. They're the same deal, but we like to tell people to do 20 because then they join us for a quarter.
So why we ask people to do the 20 to come for the whole quarter is it's a great way to connect with people. I absolutely love swing dancing. It has connected me with so many different people and so many different types of people, and being able to just connect in a bigger way to get people out of their rooms, to get out, actually dance and have fun. Like, I love it so much. Yeah. I don't remember the best thing.
And the final point I want to touch on is, I think a large part of the reason of why we have grown is in the past we only offered Monday lessons and then our social dance from 8 to 10. We started offering Thursday dances from 7 to 10, where Chris, our instructor, doesn't make it there, is why we don't offer lessons there. But he is lending us one of his, not lending, he's letting us borrow one of his speakers so that we, Caitlin and I, can go and set up the event and just play music for 3 hours, and people can practice what they learned at the lessons on Monday, or people that couldn't make it on Monday have an opportunity to come and at least try and get into the swing of it.
And for those Thursday dances, it's usually 2, maybe 3 of our officers, depending on everybody's schedules and everything. Usually both of us and then one other officer to help answer any questions that people have missed or don't understand from the Monday's lessons themselves. We have both been through the lesson set 13 plus times now, and I'm a junior. This is me going through 3 years, and this is his 4th year, so we've gone through these sets of lessons so many times that we know this fairly well, and we could teach the lesson if we even wanted to, but we use that Thursday to help have our club members help themselves kind of teach each other, because it is a social dance. So we kind of encourage that, hey, if you need help, yes, you could come and ask us because we know what we're doing, but don't be afraid to ask somebody else and get to know what they're doing and how they dance it. So, yeah. This is how Chris breaks it down. So it breaks down between his gas, which totals the 168, the 2 hours DJ dance. So on Mondays we do a 6 to 7 intermediate lesson, a 7 to 8 beginner lesson, and then an 8 to 10 just social dance for practice time, and that's the 2 hour DJ dance that he is asking money for, the 160. The Monday equipment rental is for that dance, for that social dance, and as well as lessons. He uses his own equipment to play the songs, slow the songs down, speed them up, just to help people understand, hey, this is going to be a fast song, here's how you make them smaller or bigger depending on the speed of the song. And also the Thursday equipment, like he said, the speaker that Chris has lended us, so that we can use it to help our club members practice. And that's the total breakdown coming out to 700.
So that's about that and everything. Is there any questions from anybody?
Alex?
As a club, I know it's kind of common practice. I mean, I know you guys are charging $4 per lesson, $10 per set, and $20 per quarter. But it's also common practice for a lot of clubs to do dues for people that are continuously members that are getting some of the benefits out of it. Have you guys considered a dues process to help maybe mitigate some of these costs?
I feel like charging for the lessons is our dues, especially since we open this up to not only students but the people in Ellensburg or graduates and alumni like that. So that's
the other side of it is that not all of our club members come back quarter to quarter. Like this quarter, I'm not sure how many of our club members that have come are going to come back next quarter to continue learning. So that's why we do the per quarter versus the per year. So like us officers who know that we're going to be here all the time, yes, that's a good idea for us, just because we know that yes, we like this, yes, we've done this, and we still want to continue learning. Because in the intermediate lessons, I'm still learning new things every single time I go to them. But we're just getting back on our feet, like I had said before. So if our club members continue growing like this, and we get continuous people, the same people every quarter, that might change in the future. But as of right now, it's better for us to do the per quarter prices.
Fair enough. No, that answered my question perfectly.
When can I learn swing dancing?
Have you done any sort of dancing beforehand?
I mean, I've done it too.
So, if you are familiar with Lindy Hop at all, we offer intermediate lessons at 6 o'clock on Mondays. For the rest of the quarter, we're going to be in the Cirque Ballroom. If you are not familiar with Lindy Hop, I recommend you come to the beginner lesson, which is same day, Monday at 7 o'clock.
Cirque Ballroom. So the rest of this quarter, all of our Mondays we will be in the Cirque Ballroom. On Thursdays we will be in Hebler, whichever way you guys pronounce it, 116 on Thursdays at 7 p.m. to 10. Any other questions? Yes.
So you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what's the benefit of having an instructor, especially if the officers are super experienced as well?
So, I am experienced in the way that I can dance, and you can watch me dance and it looks cool. I am not proficient in teaching. That's the benefit of that is he's been instructing at, I think the technical term is pro-amateur level for over a decade now. So he's just much more proficient than her and I are, where I can teach you the lesson that he could teach in an hour, but it would take me 2.
The other thing that I would like to mention is that we can teach the moves. He teaches the technique and how to do it properly. Like I can teach you how to do the basic rock step, but he can help teach why we do it in that order and why this holds this hold, why this connection is this connection versus we just teach the basic move. So.
I guess it's the same reason that you don't have the 100% student teaching the class, because the teacher's just better at it.
Alex?
And then just, I think this will be the last one for me. I know that there are dance classes on campus. I know I have a couple friends that have taken them. Is there a swing dance professor on campus to maybe mitigate some of the travel costs? Not to say anything incorrect about or wrong about having somebody as proficient as this, but I'm just curious about maybe finding a cheaper and easier alternative.
So there is a professor here on campus that does teach swing dancing. However, it is within a curriculum of multiple ballroom styles and just social styles of dancing. So he teaches within 2 weeks what we teach over a quarter. So as well as like during that class, he also teaches foxtrot and waltz and swing. He teaches all 3 types of dances versus we just teach the one type of dance and we go into it. As well, I believe he is only a part-time teacher here on campus. Like he's not even a full-time part-time professor, so he only has a couple classes here. So I'm not sure how much of his time he can actually spend outside of his already time that he spends here doing this for us. And plus Chris has been with us for 10 plus years now, I think. And that number changes so often, like Chris doesn't even remember how long he's been here. So it's just that kind of interaction that we have with him.
So there's another note about, there are 2 dance instructors that know swing, kind of. Adam is who she was talking about,
yes.
And our advisor, Therese. However, they both are teaching classes when we meet, so that's one of the huge blockers. But the second one is that neither of them they're both international dancers, meaning they know how to dance on a stage, but we're teaching people how to social dance, so we're giving you the tools to go to a wedding and know what you're doing.
Versus a competition like how they are teaching. So that's the other aspect of that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Are there any further questions for our presenters? Thank you. We'll be voting on this next week.
Thank you.
Moving on to supplemental funding request presentation 1812, the 14th annual Student African American Brotherhood National Conference in the amount of $9,000. Yeah.
We'll keep filing in this.
Say 10 minutes of questions?
10, yeah.
No. 10 minutes presenting, 10 minutes questions.
Just nothing out of you, man. You got some good questions. I don't know if we can handle those ones.
Well, thank you all. Thank you so much to the committee for providing us the opportunity to go present. My name is Andre Dickerson. I currently serve as the advisor for the Brother to Brother organization, or one of the advisors for the Brother to Brother organization. And we'll have our president and our VP get a chance to introduce themselves as representatives with respect to our time.
All right. I'm Jackson Woolen. I'm president of the Brother to Brother chapter.
I'm Sam Gutierrez. I'm vice president of the Brothers to Brothers chapter, also studying molecular biology and anthropology here at CWU.
Brother to Brother, at the moment, serves as a club organization. It's recognized as CWU as a club organization, but on the national scale, it's recognized as a charter and a chapter to a national organization called Student African American Brotherhood. We actually currently serve as the only chapter in the Pacific Northwest, while there are other institutions that are state institutions in Washington State that are in the process of looking at becoming a dues-paying chapter.
And it says success academically and professionally. We've kind of worked on 3 pillars, and we'll touch on that later again too, but it's academic excellence, professional development, which is why we want to go to this conference, and then community engagement.
Again, kind of fitting in mission, as Jackson was putting on, Sam can talk about what the core values are and what the organization is.
Yeah, absolutely. So accountability, intellectual development, proactive leadership, and self-discipline all we really strive to improve on these in our young men and even women. We partner with sisters as well. I don't know how much more you guys want to know about it.
So here are the advisors that we have on campus at the moment. We have additional support such as College of Business, Director for Outreach and Recruitment, Christopher Mendez. He's a phenomenal gentleman who's going to be coming in this year also and serving as support. And essentially with all of us, our goal is to make sure that we provide really great enrichment opportunities for them from a cultural diversity and inclusion standpoint, professional development standpoint, as well as making sure that they become resourceful and have a larger network, which was the reason why we became a chapter for SOB with Brother to Brother 3 years ago, to make sure that the institution is buying into the support of these young men. And so what you see here is kind of the funding goal, and the gentlemen can talk a little bit about their experience attending the conference, and you get a chance to kind of see a piece here, then we have a much thorough breakdown of the next slides.
So yeah, the reason we're asking for $9,000 is we think $9,000 is going to be the cost for airfare, and that's kind of mainly what we want to use your funds for. We are going to many other places for funds as well. Like Andres alluded to, we are connected with a lot of organizations on campus, whether that be the the Center for Leadership and Community Engagement, or the formerly known as CDSJ, Center for Diversity and Social Justice. But we are working with all those organizations to also get funding. And the College of Business has decided to support 3 to 4 brothers to this conference.
So what you see here is kind of the financial breakdown, showing the registration cost. The $220 is a registration cost that's been provided to us at that discounted rate of $220, as well as when you look at the hotel rate. The hotel for the Hilton Hotel at the Atlanta Airport, traditionally we were able to look into it, and it's about just over $200 per night, but we are getting the conference rate because they're going, and this conference is exclusive only to chapters of Brother to Brother and of SOB. There's about 100 chapters that exist nationwide. Again, like we said, we're the only ones in the Pacific Northwest. And so this is an opportunity that they are only eligible to go to because we are a dues-paying chapter represented here at CWU.
I might add to that as well. Being the only chapter here, we are the farthest reaching chapter of this organization, founded by a father organization. It was founded about 30 years ago, which is Student African American Brotherhood. We're the farthest reaching West Coast representatives, kind of pioneers, if you will, and people are seeing that. Other brothers are seeing that.
And with a couple of our advisors, we've been able to build a really good relationship with one of the founders of the SOB National Conference, and the whole organization as a whole. His name's Dr. Bledsoe, and he actually came and spoke in front of Central last year. So it's been awesome being able to go to this conference and building that relationship with him. And further our professional development, we were able to go with him to Yakima to kind of mentor some Yakima high school students.
He invited me personally to Detroit last year. Sort of sent an email to Andre Dickerson and just make sure you get this young gentleman out here. And then for the past 2 years consecutive, we've had our CWU representatives were keynotes at this conference as well. So we have done spoken word or big long life testimonies, all very powerful experiences.
And like we show here, it's 15 participants. Of all the brother members that we brought today, only Sam and myself have been to the conference. So our goal is to get more younger members involved with this as well.
And as they were speaking on kind of in relation to, for the members that have gone previously, in addition to expanding their network, gaining really phenomenal insight through these leadership workshops, this cultural enrichment in terms of them being able to work with these various young men from across the country. There's also tangible tools that they've been trained to do as chapters, which is service learning projects. So the guys are doing mentorship for youth services. through our office. They are going to be putting on a youth leadership summit in collaboration with Rotary and the school district, as well as the alternative high school that resides here at CWU. And additionally, they do quarterly leadership retreats. So what you'll see there is there's no request to Club Senate, although they're recognized as a club, because they've utilized and exhausted the funds. They've already hosted and held a leadership summit this quarter. And this is all based on the skill sets and the training and the information that they've gathered over the last couple of years from this organization that's trying to make sure that they bring that back to CWU. And then there's quite a bit more that they have to deal with me on that we're putting in place that all directly ties into working with the national constituency. And as we stated, $9,000 represents the travel in terms of the airfare. You'll see that there's a financial breakdown. Our office, the COCE, through the Male Success Initiative that Brother to Brother resides under as it relates to the national chapter, we are supporting them. We have ESC supporting them that we're going to be, we have a proposal that we're finishing and working with Michelle Cyrus on, College of Business, as Jackson mentioned, as well as their own fundraising initiatives that they're going to be putting forward. The greater need is the airfare. And so that's essentially what we're asking for you all. So, kind of like we said, kind of the funding model, looking at the supplemental funding, looking at them doing they have a 3-on-3 basketball tournament that's in the works. So they're going to be working in collaboration with Intermittent Sports. That's going to be part of a fundraiser, a couple other initiatives, and then again, reaching out to additional community partners. The thing with this is not everyone here is able to give financially, but most of them can offer their support rather than be an endorsement. So that if we're going to a certain college, if we have an endorsement from African Black Studies, if we have endorsements from student involvement, it just shows that the value's there. At the moment, the only academic college that is supporting is College of Business, and they are directly supporting College of Business students to hopefully cover the costs entirely, and or how it can vary if we get the funding from you all to take care of airfare. They can then say, hey, these resources can go toward other expenses and not toward the airfare as needed. And the gentleman can talk more about it, but this is some of the highlights of what is expected to come.
And I just want to show one thing that we do as a club at the beginning of each club, and then at the end of each club we do something. So I just want to show it real quick. Saving lives,
salvaging dreams.
Saving lives,
salvaging dreams.
So that usually starts off our meeting, and then we all rise at the end, and it goes, I am my brother's keeper.
Together we will rise.
I am my brother's keeper.
Together we will rise.
It's a phenomenal opportunity for them to develop a level of brotherhood and community, and that's the biggest goal. There's a lot of, I'm working with institutional effectiveness right now to really look at the retention aspect of it, to look at the recruitment aspect of it. We've had, we've been recognized as a chapter for 3 years. And we've had one full graduating class that has represented more than 5 to 10 members. And so I'm working on it now to look at what the retention rates are as it relates to, especially as you see before you, especially men of color on the campus. But we represent everyone, as we know, it's everyone's included. But we're trying to figure out how are we systemically addressing the different gaps, needs from a retention standpoint, as well as a graduation standpoint to address attrition, which is the reason why we got the institutional buy-in to pay the initial membership fee, which is pretty hefty, it's like $5,000. Then we also have yearly dues, which is about $1,000 itself. And so it's one of those things where some of you may recognize this gentleman who's a speaker, DeAndre Whitefield, who's an actor, comedian. He's been in several movies. They have many celebrities there, like Holly Berry was there last year. So students got a chance to meet her. But it's over 100 chapters nationwide. So there's several hundred students who get a chance to attend.
And just kind of touching back on what you said, Andre, it's so important to sort of recognize what we need to change and things that we can work on together. And as somebody studying sciences and going out there's a lot of business kids and comms kids as well, and from a completely different region of the United States as I am. And I came up with a really good family. I don't want to get too sappy on you guys today, but to sit in a room full of 50 to 100 other gentlemen and be one of the only ones left sitting down when the presenter says, stand up if you have friends that have been shot. Stand up if you have friends that are dead or in jail. And everybody's standing up. Stand up if you don't know your mom and dad. And again, it's not me personally, but to realize this firsthand, flying all the way for that, on top of the different leadership, attributes that I walked away with, was incredibly powerful. To me, as an anthropologist and a scientist, it showed me that no matter how I experience my own reality, this reality does also exist. And I think that is absolutely paramount in changing the future.
My apologies again, I cut you guys off.
Okay.
This is up.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah, so as a point of information, if you want to allocate them more time, you can make a motion to allot them a certain amount of time. However, the table's open for discussion.
This was our leadership success summit that Andre was talking about.
Are there any questions for the presenters? Alex?
How many members in total do you have right now?
I would say probably like 20 to 25.
Closer to 25.
Yeah.
Show up consecutively.
Yeah, so on top of that, being that it's only 15 members, we are going to have to make decisions on who goes. And we have a process for that based off of how many hours you committed, either community engagement or our professional development areas. There's criteria that you have to meet to be able to go on the trip.
Right, and while sort of checking these boxes off, meeting these criteria, you're gaining leadership experience, community hours, your GPA is rising, things like that.
And there is a tentative list at the moment that meets that criteria.
Are any of the advisors attending?
Yeah, I think there's going to be probably 2 of us.
And is that?
No,
in
no,
the
that's
class?
not included in this. Nope, not included in this. So that's going to be our individual departments, and so I may not be able to go, in all honesty, but Christopher Mendez from College of Business is planning on going, and then one of us will go. But usually, yes, sir, we usually have at least 2 of us that go.
Yeah, Dr. Champagne went with us last year.
Stephanie?
Is the 2,500 from ESC not committed yet, or is
Not committed yet.
Okay, and if that isn't committed, is that going to be something you guys are going to have to fund yourself, or hopefully find a fundraising?
Yes, ma'am. We're going to be looking at some. Yeah.
Well, and not on there necessarily is all the departments, because I know in the previous years, 2 years ago, we were on top of the College of Business. We were able to get funding from multiple colleges, and we are heading that right now.
And that varies from like $500 to $1,000 at best. So between looking at all the different colleges, you're still we're asking for $9,000 because we know that that's going to be the hefty.
We're aggressively pursuing all options.
Eric?
Sir?
Is Brother to Brother in the process of following through and becoming a part permanently of ESC?
It's come up a couple times. Possibly. In all honesty, possibly. And the reason why we would have the eligibility is because technically we're serving the needs of a large population of the student body. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Alex?
I actually have 2 questions. So you said that you said that Brother Brother has been around for about 3 years. There's been essentially 1 full graduating class, and you briefly spoke about a lot of professional development, a lot of networking, how you guys present yourself is very marketable for people going into any business or any science field. Do you have any kind of any stories of anybody that's graduated that's had phenomenal job opportunities as a result of the skills that they've developed in this organization?
You could do the post-graduation. I could do the pre-grad.
I mean, last year was pretty insane. We had people going off to law schools, Anthony Perez all the way down to Florida, and he had multiple offers for law schools. Armando Ortiz, ASCW president.
He was also going to be president.
Yeah. And then current president Gio, ASCWU, he's also a part of Brother to Brother. So it's just like, it seemed like all of our seniors last year, just huge. Like Daniel Lara ended up at Target, and he's one of like a big representative there.
Yeah, not to take away from personal or individual achievement as well, but this organization is help guide these young gentlemen and help direct passion, I think, as well. But for myself, I'm an undergrad researcher. I got a pretty big research gig that flew me out to the jungles of Mexico for 2 months and I stayed out there all under the NSF, National Science Foundation grant that, you know, sponsored my scientific research. I learned about cultures and science and everything. And while, again, not directly because of anything other than my personal achievement, this has contributed largely in helping me to focus on what I want to get from life and from school.
We'll have additional data too. We have 4 individuals over the last 2 years who have also been accepted to the McNair Scholars Program. We've been able to show that they've acquired exemplary leadership opportunities and professional development, and those have been by way of Dr. Cornell, the director, coming in, personally connecting with these young men and saying, you are all representatives. I would like to present to you about this program.
And we just recently heard a testimony from a current member. They said, brother to brother has kept me in college. And it heard it a couple times. But
He came up and hugged me last meeting and was like, dude, like the stuff that you're saying in front of the whole group of guys, like that resonates with me. And I want you to know that last year, when I was about to drop out, I'm not making this up. I promise you. He said I was about to drop out. My grades were low and I didn't know what to do. But just seeing you, and excuse my language, he said, you're on your shit, man. You just had like everything to the T. Like, and I thought, God, I can strive to be like this person. He told me that like last week. It gives me chills talking about it.
And overall, this is a brotherhood. It's I consider basically everyone in the club my best friends. I love hanging out with them. I look forward to Thursday meetings when we dress up and you get to hang out with each other. It's great.
And to second on that, honestly, last year I was a freshman, this year I'm a sophomore. My fall quarter, I didn't do the best because it's my first year in college. It's not an excuse, but I just didn't. I'm first generation. I don't know what's going on. Andre and this man named Saeed. Saeed is the one who told me I need to be in this club. It'll help me. It'll make me to the man I want to be. And so this club, I just want to let you guys know this club is serious. Like it's not something that should be taken lightly. Like it really helps people out. It does.
Eric, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious what your majors or prospective majors are.
My major is I'm family and child life major.
Yeah.
Xander?
I want to do looking towards law and justice and Russian studies.
Communications.
Law and justice.
Supply chain management with a minor in communications.
Molecular biology and anthropology.
Finance major with a minor in economics.
Biology with a focus on biomedical science.
That's really wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I was just curious.
Jeanette?
Not to take away from what you guys have been talking about, but you said that there was yearly dues of like $1,000 or something like that. Is that your members, the men are paying, or
No.
So
that's what the university is paying to
Okay.
maintain our recognition as a chapter.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Are there any further questions for
There's one
representatives? Yes, Eric?
So is that part of base funding, or is that coming from somewhere else?
No, that's part of base funding. So it's lived in different departments that have represented, but at the moment it's part of the Male Success Initiative that's coming out of the CLCE.
Any further questions for representatives? Thank you. We'll be voting on this next week. Moving on to voting for supplemental funding request 1803.
I would like to request a 5-minute recess.
Is there a motion? Yeah, there's a motion on the table for a 5-minute recess. There's a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? We'll resume this meeting in 5 minutes.
We're reading my mind. It's like I need to go to the bathroom. That's my 5th text message that I always get during the
That's you. You just bring it.
No, I went up and thought about it. I didn't get one break.
Yeah.
I'm not like.
I didn't think about it like I said until Gary said something. Good morning.
That's a good
What are they?
About professionals. Or in my mind, coffee.
At this point, I think tea.
Yeah.
Amber. Yeah.
Yeah, you have 4.5 minutes.
Okay, 4.5
Yeah,
minutes.
power nap
Just
in there.
hit me. We already
I
hit
guess I
that.
went down to fill my water bottle and I got distracted talking to someone. I came back up and I was like, no.
Well,
Like, that was the
did
entire purpose of
same
going
thing.
down.
Well, I didn't walk down there, but I was like, oh, I should have refilled for next
Oh, no,
time.
I did. I walked down there and someone started talking to me and someone else walked by. I was like, oh, I gotta go. I walked up with them and I was like,
I want to talk to whoever built it. Why did it?
Oh god, thing came on. Stuck.
yeah, that one maybe I could have got the appropriate response.
But you just have to stay straight face the whole time.
I'll split the mask.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the mask I because it was all attached, so it was like tucked in to that because we were downtown doing it. But then it's like a full mask and it's fine in the shape. But then in the, like any sort of sun at the angle it was at when we were doing downtown trick or treat, I'm like I can't see.
Oh my gosh. You had a cute group though.
Oh my gosh. No, we are not friends.
The kids always pick.
We just had this conversation. We're gonna have a conversation.
Dinner.
Oh, I guys want to. Are you talking about Central?
Yes.
I saw you and your family.
Yes.
I got no food
Yeah,
in my
I
house,
saw you
dude.
there.
I've been too lazy to go to the grocery store.
Oh, it was super man.
So,
My daughter, she was Supergirl.
Oh,
Man.
and after like the whole fiasco happened with the boiling water like on my eyelid, like
There was a beauty.
Girl, what?
oh yeah, you
I
were
should
around
drop
for that.
chicken in the
Birthday.
boiling
So
water.
it was,
Just
No, I
Should wear
boiled
safety
some
goggles.
chicken and I put, like, eyelids in. I
I was
don't
like,
know if you've
yeah.
ever boiled
But the
chicken,
baby.
No.
Never boiled chicken.
I get the point.
Yeah.
Does that really keep happening?
Floppy ears.
But when you boil it, like
this.
I need to get like
so
lip
like
sense.
that,
and then pull it here, and it'll get off the inside. Like,
no, like
close your lips with this. It'll come out.
yeah, like
It's on
yeah.
recording, so it's probably really
But anyways, like when you boil chicken, it's really easy to
Yeah.
shred. Like
Yeah.
really easy.
It's got all the hot water in it.
So I was boiling chicken because I was making this chili, and the tongs I was using had like rubber ends, so I went to grab the chicken, and it was kind of slippery, and it like fell out of the tongs and back into the water, and the water splashed on my face and like got on my eyes.
They should not have
But
burned.
I like made it.
You're on
It's a
video, you
Pinterest
know
recipe.
that.
It's fine. It's a Pinterest recipe, and it like really doesn't taste that good.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like
a lot of Pinterest recipes. I'm like, this was a fail. Have you ever tried like a Pinterest recipe?
I've done
and,
it once and it was really good, and then I tried it again and
Well,
it
there's no if you see this, it's either good or it's not.
No, this happened in my washer. Somehow it like it looks like someone took scissors from my pants.
Okay.
And I took them out and I was like,
approved 95. You haven't approved any of those other ones yet.
Okay.
So that's
Can
vote
we,
tonight.
that is
So you basically you've approved 104, leaving 95 on the table.
Okay.
Oh, so those other ones are still gonna
There's
subtract from
62
it.
left
Yeah,
off of
those
what was
ones
requested.
haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, so we haven't approved,
There
so
was-
we're already gonna be.
Okay. Then I misheard because I had heard 62, and I thought that's what we had left after all the stuff we've already approved, not all the stuff that we're hearing. Okay.
Nope.
I'm
Because you've only approved 3 so far.
Okay, that makes more sense. I was a little bit curious about that.
So we got leadership.
So that's how
Alright.
much we have left.
You all here? Good. I'd like to call this meeting back to order at 6:46 p.m. and move into voting on supplemental funding request 1803, the leadership conference, in the amount of $276. The table is open for discussion.
Was this the conference that they had already went to, and they were just?
Yes, this is the group that was ready to go in front of the committee, but the committee wasn't formed yet.
Okay.
Chemistry, right?
Yes.
No, safety
No,
engineers.
Safety engineers.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh wait, did I just misspeak then?
There's a few.
Different.
I think
It's
I-
not the
I
same
think
one.
I misspoke.
I've also been
This
hearing
is
things
not
incorrectly.
Yes,
Not
that
the
is not
chemistry.
correct.
Not the people.
No, this is a different request.
So I have a question for you all. Well, not all, but Lacey,
Yes.
the $276. So they've already incurred this debt, right?
Nope, I am actually, that was in, yeah. So I was talking about a different request. They're actually traveling November 7th. So they have
Okay, so they have not incurred it.
sent through
Okay.
the aid's expenses yet.
So going on what I brought up last week with the large request, I would at least initially want to see a 15% reduction in the funding for not only this one, but as a for my own point of view for all of them, thinking about future requests, what our current budget level is, and moving forward. So that's kind of my first inclination.
I second the thought process on keeping track of the longevity of the budget to make sure that there are other things that we can work with in the future. I don't necessarily agree with kind of an arbitrary 15% across the board, because
And that's fair.
Yeah, I think it differs depending on, because
Yeah.
in my opinion, this one is $276.
$76.
I think this is kind of like
that's fair.
a little bit of a no-brainer on that
It's
one for
strictly for
15% off of that. But as soon as we get into things like $10,000 for going to China and Vietnam, and then we go into things like $7,000 for the legislative affairs. I feel like that's more applicable to the 15%.
And what I was just getting at was that I just want everyone to know where I'm coming from, whether it's a small amount or a large amount, we still have, from my point of view, I still have to consider that someone's going to come and ask for $150 in spring, and if there's no money for them in spring, that's still taking away from students.
I like the idea. I totally get where you're going with that. The only thing that I have a hard time with is what we're looking at for what they're asking for. Like, are they asking for $150 of just food because they've already gotten everything covered, or is it the $270? Is it? And if you were to compare it to somebody else who had the $150, same amount that they're asking, but that's for like their airfare.
Okay.
You know what I
see your
mean?
point.
Like,
see your
that's
point.
not. Are they doing everything they can to reduce the price themselves, like we've seen with some of the people that have come to see us already, or is it, this is what we have and we want you guys to cover it all?
I get it. I understand that, and you're right. Very fair point. Joey?
Well, and just for point of order, great discussion, because this is looking at the longevity piece, but again, keeping on track, we want to remain on this funding request.
Oh, yeah.
The part that I would
Sorry
add
about
on there
that.
too, though, while we're in the frame of that, though, is that each funding request is going to be individual and different, so I would caution against setting any standard, because some groups are going to come and request their full funding from us. Others, such as this one, are going to have other funding that's covering pieces, and they're requesting only a portion. So that's why it's difficult for us to have a set matrix or rubric on there within those cases.
And it might backfire if the word gets out that everyone gets 85%.
Oh,
in the spring, though.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And
No, I
But definitely,
some,
But for point of order, that we should keep it on top of this specific funding request to move things forward.
Shelby.
I just kind of wanted back to this point. They have $781.75 in their club account. They did say they wanted to use that money for charity and scholarship opportunities. However, if they are truly only paying for their meals that are not covered by the conference, I struggle to see how we can fully fund this anyway, because, I mean, if they have that much money in their club account.
Yeah.
That's for food.
I agree with you, Shelby. I think that it's important for them to have some accountability for this trip, and I think that if they only have to pay $276 for 2 days for how many people? Is this one person or? I don't see on this thing.
It's the American Society of Safety Engineers. I think there's a group of people.
Yeah. How many? I don't
Four
see
people.
4 people.
4 people.
Yeah. 276 divided by 4. That's
It's
nothing.
$69 per person.
Yeah,
And I guess
feel like that's
for like. That's kind of where I'm
I don't
coming
s-
from with the.
Yeah.
Not that I'm wanting to just 15% off everybody, but the validity of the request based on what money they have and in their own club account, and the ability to come up with $69 seems, at least from my point of view, I would probably be able to do that knowing I'm going to go to a conference like that, and that's all I had to have. I mean, they're going to have other costs, but.
Agreed.
In terms of this particular one, what I look at is much what your thought process was when you were looking at it was the price per student in terms of going to something. So what I usually do is take the total cost divided by how many students are going, and based on that, that's how I look at it. This one particular, I personally support it. I think that $276 divided by 4 people for $69 per person, yes, that's something the students could come up with, but at the same time, that's an incredibly high return on investment, in my opinion, since this is a professional networking event where people can potentially get jobs out of this. I know a few people that did go and they have job offers, not necessarily from this, but because of a result of some of the skills that they learned, they have job offers. And so paying $69 per student now to result in a potential, I don't know the exact salary of a person in that job, but let's just say $30,000 to $50,000 a year. I think that's a really big bang for the buck personally. But I also see the point where you're coming from, where $69 per student is not a whole lot to come up with.
And plus they have it in their club account.
Mm-hmm.
If they wanted to do it that way, if they could.
Right.
I guess I'll ask this question since I wasn't here. How many members are in this club?
I think they said
It says
There are 4 going.
4 going.
I don't think they said the total numbers.
Yeah,
I
they
don't think
did.
anyone asked.
Okay, and the reason I bring that up is that might be important to know, because if only some clubs will not want to use their club funds if it's only benefiting a small number if there's a large club. So potentially a good question to ask in the future.
They should be here.
They don't have to be here. You have to ask all the questions when they're here.
You warned us about that.
Oh,
I did warn you.
Jeanette?
I would just like to point out, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's for food, which is not benefiting anybody outside of the people that are receiving it, which I'm not saying one way or the other, just making a point that we are funding $276 for only 4 people. That doesn't impact anybody outside of them. Just saying.
Is there a motion with that?
I'm not used to this, so I don't know how to do that, but I amend that we do not fund the full amount.
So there's a motion on the table to not fund this funding request. Is there a second? Dr. Kennedy seconds. Is there any discussion?
Point of information on your
No, please.
motion. You're motioning to not fund this at all. Or was it a reduction? Because I didn't quite.
I mean, if somebody had an idea to make it better as a reduction, please come forward, but I don't see where that, so yes, I guess what I'm saying is no.
If there's a motion and a second to not fund the request, is there any discussion?
I just want to point out that in preparation for this meeting, I put together a quick Excel sheet. I know I'm a nerd, I'm sorry. But I can actually put in any percentage that you want, and it will show the change in it, not only in terms of the total amount that would be funded, but also the amount per student. So if you throw out a percentage, I can tell you what will actually happen.
I don't have a percentage off the top of my head. They're gone, it looks like, from, and I know they've got flying dates as well, but November 7th to November 8th, which is a day. But
Maddie?
I would like to make an amendment to fund half of it, which would be $138. I think that's a small amount of money, considering all the other funding requests that we're getting. I mean, then at least we would be helping them a little bit, and instead of it being $69, it would be 30-something. That's much easier to come up with in about a week than 70, and I think that's more than fair. I don't know if anybody else wants to second that.
There needs to be a second.
Yes, and I have a question for our parliamentarian. How does an amendment properly
So
work?
when there's an amendment, there is a second is necessary. Then there is discussion on the amendment, and then we vote on the amendment, and then we then go to the original motion and vote on that, whether it be amended or not.
Thank you. All right. Is there a second to that amendment? Alex seconds. Is there any discussion on the amendment for $138?
Yeah, at least that's what it said when I did 276 divided by 2.
You got it right, and it's $34.5 per person.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair, $34.
Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Of the amendment.
Of the amendment. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The amendment passes. So now, is there any further discussion on the funding request of $138?
I call the question.
Yes.
Well, I call the question, that means we vote.
Oh, okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes with one abstention in the amount of $138. Thank you, Eric. Answering my questions. Moving on to voting on supplemental funding request 1804, the Big Band Tour of China and Vietnam in the amount of $10,650. The table is open for discussion.
So, basic math, $10,650 for 3 students to go to China and Vietnam is $3,550 per student.
And this is for about 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yes.
So it says, if I'm reading it correctly, they didn't put totals, but that it's going to be $2,100 for food for 2 weeks. I feel like that's a lot of money to be shelling out just for them. I know that they're going for a really long time, but that's also a very large amount of money just to give them for food.
I think they said it was expensive over there, or in one of the cities. They said it was going to be much more expensive than the other one.
Well, and this number they used is based on the per diem allowed, correct? Basically?
It's a much lower dollar
Oh.
figure, but they're basing it off of just a flat $50 per day.
Okay.
Per
So they've already reduced with, based on a request, based on per diem that they could receive.
Yeah.
Yes, Maddie?
Again, on this one, for me, it's about the accountability. I remember asking if they had committed any money themselves, and they are not. So they're asking for the full trip to be funded. And I think that, again, it's important to have some accountability for the students to pay some amount, regardless of how much it is, just so that there's some accountability for them. I have a hard time being okay with completely funding a full trip for 3 people. Just because I personally don't think that's fair to everybody else. So I'm not sure what that dollar amount should be. But that's just where I'm coming from right now. I'm not sure if anybody else has the same feelings, but
Do we know if when this was planned?
They're going December 8th.
No, I mean, that's not what I,
Sorry.
that's not what I, when
Oh,
it was, when it came,
When it was brought to
when the
us.
idea started that they were going to
They do this every,
Didn't
they
say
do this
these
every
talk
year.
about it in April?
And this is, well, I'm gonna shut up on this one.
You
I'm just
can
gonna,
answer
I'm
the
just
one,
gonna
yeah.
shut up
Yeah,
on this
okay.
one.
Oh, I see where you're
And you can read into that however you want, but they do this every year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had
I'm-
another question for like clarification. There was a student that's going on this trip and another.
In the orchestra trip?
Yeah, do you know how much money that would be for that one student to go for like a bunch of trips for like 3 weeks basically?
For that one individual student, $4,300.
Well, that, I don't know, that's an active student, right? And for example, everyone pays the rec center fee. If you go in there every day, it's a wonderful deal. If you go in there once per quarter and get a drink out of the drinking fountain, it's an expensive drink of water. So I wouldn't like tell
see your point.
this student that they should be singled out for being like involved. That's my
Discourage
opinion.
participation.
Yeah, that's just my opinion.
And they're drastically different involvement, different situations.
And it also might set a precedent then if any of the orchestra people come back that are in a math club or something else later on, it might be problematic for them.
They might feel like they have to pick one over the other if they're
Or
not going to get funding for
we'd
both.
have to somehow account for which students are in which clubs.
Yeah, you're right.
But that's just what I think.
If they do this every year, do we have stats on how much they were funded in previous years? Like if they were fully funded or not funded, or if not, that's okay. I was just curious.
I'm not recalling him coming to ask us for money last year, but last year was chaotic with base funding, so don't trust my memory. I mean, we have had a couple others who've come for one-offs here and there. Last year, the year before, we had one student who went to Europe. I don't specifically remember this one, the China and Vietnam one, though.
Shelby.
I guess the question that's coming to my mind is, I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, but have they known about this since April?
Like, that was my question.
There was,
Yeah.
they gave a paper out, That might have June been 12th, 2017.
That was like their official letter they gave us.
Was the letter that they gave us from the whatever Embassy of the United States of America.
So I mean, that raises the question to me, what have they done to kind of prepare for it, for the cost? Well, they did mention that there's a great personal cost already in terms of education and practice and instruments here and everything. But it's been a long time since June.
It has, and for myself personally, when I'm going to go on a trip, I know many months in advance because I can't just go right on my own dime instantly. So I have to put money aside, and would they have not been putting money aside to go on this trip already, based that they're going to be in traveling through China, Vietnam, and with the idea that, you know, people want to get souvenirs or what have you, or entertainment of whatever nature, you would think they would be planning that as part of this 3-week excursion.
Maddie.
Another thing for me is this, since this is only 3 students, 3 people, I also have a hard time seeing how this is going to help the bigger picture. I'm not wording this correctly, but you know, help more than
Students
just
at
3
home.
people.
What's the value brought back?
Yeah,
Right.
where's all the value from if they're just touring around? You know, to me it seems more like that's a personal experience type of trip, where if it were a conference or something more of that nature, I see more value in things like that versus on here it says that they'll get professional development, work experience, and networking, but I don't see how you can network that well in foreign countries like China and Vietnam. Maybe that's an ignorant thing to say, and I'm sorry if it is, or if I offended anybody by saying that, but to me, I just don't see the value versus being it just a fun trip for them to go on, you know? I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody right now by saying that, but that's how I feel, and right now, I personally don't want to fund this because that's a large amount of money. Yeah, it is for a long time, but for only 3 students, and I don't see the value.
Alex.
They did mention though that it is, and this was kind of a consistent theme with everybody that was music related, that a lot of what they do is not just necessarily school taught, but they also do teaching within themselves. So I can see value in terms of them going to something like this with so many other talented individuals and learning from them and then bringing it back to teach the other students, because it is expensive to get personal lessons on anything. That being said, I can understand where you're coming from with the funding of it. Throwing out a number and just I want to hear what you guys kind of think about it. So the original cost is obviously $10,650 for 3 students. I put a 75% adjustment, so take 25% off of that. Same thing we did with the other one, and that brings it down to $7,987.50, which then brings it down to $2,662.50 per student. I can change that percentage any way that we want. I just wanted to throw it out there to bring more discussion on actually going to the next step.
That
Julia?
still seems like a lot of money per
It
student.
is.
Like
Yeah.
over $2,000, because with the band, didn't it end up being like, we gave them less than $2,000 per student, like for orchestra, sorry, I should be more specific. But they had like less than $2,000 per student.
I
Stephanie?
think the orchestra ended up with like 1,300%.
Stephanie?
So I almost wish we had more time, or that they had more time, because I think it's a lot of money too, but we would probably be hurting them a lot if we don't fund enough, but because it's in a month, and so it's like they'd have to fundraise a whole bunch. And I don't know if they could pull that out of their pockets, I'm not sure. But that's, because it's a lot of money too. But I just keep thinking about that too, that.
It's been since June.
And that's what I'm kind of struggling with, because they've had a long time, and it seems like maybe we don't see what they're doing behind the scenes. Maybe they have tried, but didn't work. But
Well, you didn't get that from the presentation.
right.
Was the food cost total $2,200 for all 3 of them?
They're asking
700
more
times
money for
3.
food than money to lodge.
That's
Which
what I
Yeah,
was
how
saying.
does that work?
No sense.
Is it
That's
just like
what I
way
was
cheaper to
saying.
get hotels in
Super
other
cheap
countries?
That makes no sense.
But I- Huh?
It's probably group lodging, so that's probably why it's
Okay.
that much.
I don't know.
I tend to agree with Maddie, and I guess I'm coming maybe from the same direction. Was it you, Jeanette, that was talking about or was it was you, Julia, about the the cost per student going to the Kennedy Center? I think that and again, I'm not trying to set a standard, I'm not doing that, but we want to be fair to everybody, and I just think we should even go lower than 75%.
Okay. I put it at 50% based on the conversation. That would then put the amount funded at $5,325 and then $1,775 per student. I'm just going easy round numbers, but I can put any percentage they desired.
Julia.
I think it might be fair almost if we help pay for their plane tickets, because that is the major chunk of it, and the main expense. There are going places, so it is an important trip, but.
Pardon me for interrupting you. Food subtracted as a number, but lodging, transportation costs.
How much is the food?
$2,100.
Can I pause for that? Julie, were you done with your point?
Yeah, I was done.
That's pardon me for
You're fine.
interrupting you.
That would be $8,500 or $8,550, and then the cost per student would be $2,850.
Okay.
I also talk really quickly. I can slow down. I apologize.
Hey, Maddie.
So, in my opinion, I'm just voicing it. I have been this whole time, but if you guys do choose to fund, you guys already know my point. I feel like we shouldn't, but if we do, I mean, I think it's more than fair to pay for at least half of their plane tickets. But I feel like as far as accountability goes, like I brought up earlier, they should have to pay for their own food. And then, I mean, as far as the funding support goes on this front page, they haven't requested money from Academic Senate. I don't know if they can. Is that an opportunity?
The music department is or I believe they should be represented. There's 52 spots on Academic Senate, so I have a hard time believing the music department is not one of them.
They should have it. They should have a seat where they need to go through the process to make that thing, because all academic.
Yeah. For Academic Senate, in order to request funds, you have to have somebody representing your department as an active member. So if they don't have somebody from the music department representing them, they don't have access to those funds.
Julia.
They're not a club on campus, right? So they can't request funds from Club Senate.
Correct.
Okay.
So they're not traveling per their. These individuals are part of clubs, but they're not
This
traveling per their clubs.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
So, how much were the?
Eric, make sure you're called on by Eric.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Eric, go for it.
How much was put down for just the airfare?
6,000 for 3 tickets.
And how much was the lodging
Lodging was $1,050
total?
total.
So
because they did 350 times 3, and that's what I got.
Okay. And that number comes up to
7,050.
7,050. I make a motion to that we approve $7,050 for the big band tour of China and Vietnam.
As a point of information, I would just like to clarify that this entire request minus food minus lodging is $7,500. Just a point of information.
Oh,
I said that, that was my bad.
$7,500. So that's my motion. I motion that we approve $7,500 for the big band tour of China and Vietnam.
This motion on the table for $7,500. Is there a second? Alex seconds. Is there any discussion?
Where's the?
Yeah, sorry.
No. Yep.
Shelby?
I think I had the same question as you, but clarified me I didn't. Where's the 500 coming from? Because I've done the math and I don't see that
Isn't
anywhere.
it 750?
Am I missing?
7,050.
And lodging.
Yeah.
Oh, my apologies. I got the number wrong then.
Okay.
7,050. Okay.
I amend my motion to say 7,000, or correction to the motion, $7,050.
Okay. This motion on the table for $7,050. Is there a second? Alex seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Motion passes in the amount of $7,050.
That's just for air.
And yeah, with the description being for airfare and lodging.
We're
Yeah.
on to
Moving on to voting on supplemental funding request 1805, the AAAS National Convention in the amount of $1,430. The table's open for discussion.
They already went.
Yes, Stephanie.
And these were the, for clarification, these were the students who have already gone in their trip. Just making sure. So they have already technically paid, and we're getting reimbursed with this.
Julia.
I think that they learned a lot at their trip, and they're not requesting a ridiculous amount of money for the students that went. So, I personally think we should reimburse them.
Okay, well, I make a motion to fund the full amount of $1,430.
There's a motion on the table in the full amount. Maddie seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes with 1 abstention being Patrick. Moving on to voting on supplemental funding request 1806, the legislative policy analyst position in the amount of $7,820. Alex.
So, real quick, this is for this one as well as any future AACB related funds requests that come through. I will be here for obviously the Excel spreadsheet and the financial side of things, and I can give historical context as well as kind of if there's anything I know that you guys have any questions on. I will try to answer those questions as much as possible, but being a representative from student government and the liaison, I will be abstaining from this as well as any future AACBU funds requests.
Thank you. Eric.
I have a question for you that maybe you can answer. This is a position in addition to a position that's already there?
So this is a position underneath one of the departments within student government. So there's the vice president for legislative affairs, who's Michael Scott. He currently has 2 office positions that within his within the Ellensburg portion, and then he also has a position that lobbies in Olympia during the winter months. One of the positions is his programmer, and the other one is his assistant. And then this person would be specifically would be a third position for the Ellensburg office, specifically to look at any of the policies or any of the bills that come through, which on average I believe there's anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000, and they can range anywhere from 20 to 60 pages per bill, and so that'd be their whole job.
So I have another question.
Yes, Eric.
If I may. If this is a necessity each year, why is this position not included in base funding?
That's a really, really good question. I think the easiest answer to that would be that each VP has a different perspective on how they want to do it. In my office, I hired 2 additional staff. Normally there's 3, but I hired 5 simply because I view my position differently this year than the previous VP. The way that Michael views his is he wants, or at least I don't mean to speak on his behalf, but based on the communication that's been given to me, he wants somebody to have a more thorough understanding of the policies, because he has to not only act as a VP, but also do a series of other duties that prevent him from reading all of the bills that come into play. So he doesn't want any of them slipping through the cracks, as well as he wants somebody with a different political perspective as him, because we are supposed to be nonpartisan. He wants to have somebody that can disagree with them on a bill in order to get a better understanding of how this could potentially affect students with different political backgrounds.
Okay. Maddie.
And I'm just trying to recall information from the PowerPoint. Does anybody remember something about voting? That this person would be able to vote since the other student couldn't?
Oh.
Error, point of information.
They would vote on the Washington Student Association because Michael is a board member, so he would not have a vote on the a vote on the committee.
Okay, I thought so. I just couldn't remember if it was.
So,
yeah.
Shelby.
Question for Alex. So you hired 2 additional people for your office. Where did that funding come from?
So each individual office, with the exception of 2, comes out of their own individual department's budget. The budget that I work off, as well as the president works off, is the general budget, which is accessible to all the all the VPs. So if there's any additional funding that they want, that would normally come from there. However, being the beginning of the quadrennium and based on the different changes that were made to not only our insurance policy, but also to what was requested last year, that budget is unfortunately incredibly tight. However, there was enough to fill those 2 additional spots. We did make sure that we had enough before we hired those people on.
But that.
Yes, Patrick.
But I mean, you could reasonably say that had you not hired 2 more, there might be room in that budget for this one.
It would take some changing.
In a logical basis, not in a, I'm not passing a judgment.
Oh, no. Yeah,
Eric?
So my concern in funding this is that we have the lobbyist that's going to be in Olympia, and that will be working directly with the legislators from not only Kittitas County, but across the state, and we'll need to have the ability to, as the legislators do, understand the bills that are in front of the legislature. And then here in Ellensburg, we have 2 students working in legislative affairs, one for programming and the other.
And then one's the administrative assistant.
The administrative assistant. I guess my question is, what is Michael doing? Because I see this position as Vice President of Legislative Affairs to be able, if I were the position, I would need to be intimately aware of what's going on in the legislature, what bills are coming forward from across the state in regards to us here at university level, or even education itself across the state. And with that, I would have to do research. I would, as the lobbyist is going to do. The programmer, the administrative assistant, not so much. However, the administrative assistant can assist the vice president of legislative affairs and the lobbyist to do research also. So I question the need for this additional person. Yeah.
Would you like me to answer the question on what Michael actually does in terms of like the extent of his duty?
If you would like, that's yeah.
So Michael's job is arguably one of the more important, and in fact, in a lot of different student governments, legislative affairs is actually not its own individual. It's actually mixed in with the presidency because it does have such a high value. But he jumps back and forth between actually visiting Olympia and checking in with the with the liaison, as well as working with the BOD on any of the big projects that we have going on. Obviously, you're aware of the MOU. He was instrumental in writing the actual sheet to make sure the language is appropriate for that. But then on top of that, he's just constantly going back and forth with all the other things going on, not only just in terms of statewide and also federally, but he also works in Kittitas County to understand what's going on here and what will more quickly affect some of the students, such as some of the new housing bills that are potentially going to be coming through here soon, and then also working adamantly to make sure that every student is registered to vote.
Thank you.
So,
yes, Patrick.
So the first priority here in the S&A policies, priorities and evaluation criteria. First priority is request. The request pertains to conditions that were not reasonably anticipated at the time of the base funding request. And it seems to me that the explanation you just gave should have been the role of that person in each of the previous years. It might be that it's getting harder, or it might be that to do it its fullest extent, they need more people. But really, that to me seems like something that should go through the base funding process. Then the second and third priorities have to do with things that do or do not add non-student payroll. So this is student payroll. So this is, I guess, probably second priority, right? I guess that's my statement.
Here.
I make a motion that we fund the legislative policy analyst position at 50%, which would be, sorry.
I got you. Just 1 second.
Thank you.
At 50%, that would be $3,767, which would be a, well, I guess there's no cost per student. Yeah, $3,767.
Is that a second?
It was a question.
Okay, we have to go to a second first. Is there a second on that motion?
And the motion dies.
There's a second by Dr. Martin Kennedy. Is there any discussion? Yes, Shelby.
I guess I have a point of clarification. What is the minimum we have to pay a student employee?
$11.50.
$11.50. Okay.
It'll be bumped up to 12 at the beginning of January. January 1st.
Yeah.
Are you sure it's 11.50?
It's just
11.50 in January.
I was like, I do not get paid 11.50.
Yes, Shelby.
So math extraordinaire.
Oh gosh.
If we cut this in half, what does that do to the minimum wage standard? Or
Lacey?
It will not be changing the hourly wage. It would be changing how many hours that person is working each week. This is based off of 20 hours a week, which is the max for a student.
So this would give them 10 hours a week.
Julia.
Okay, question. Is this the only place that they can get money to pay the student? Is that how that works? Was S&A where they would get the money to pay the student, so they wouldn't have another place to go to get funding for this?
Lacey.
If you are referring to like Club Senate and Academic Senate, then yes, that this is the only other funding request.
And why doesn't the money come out of base funding? Oh, why doesn't it come out of base funding?
Yeah,
It wasn't
proposed
in the budget.
Oh, it had to be proposed last year?
Yeah.
Oh, smart.
Oh, that's the judge.
Eric.
I just feel that if this is a position that would be necessary, then I believe it would be necessary then to change the directives on the other positions. The program person and the administrative assistant doing research. I don't feel that we should be funding an employee at the full rate when there is the possibility that they can request these funds in base funding.
Stephanie?
To your question, his other employees, they aren't skilled in research and policy analysis, and so that the person he will hire will have those skills to be able to more adequately understand those bills, to help, like Alex said, more quickly brief Michael on these bills so that he can get out that information to us that's most important to the student body based on the bills and the legislation that's coming through.
Joy?
What I would say, and again, just as information purposes and not a recommendation, is that base funding, again, is only every 4 years, so they would have to wait. And again, going off the point of what you had just said with this position, we can't make any decision. Michael can choose to reframe or restructure the positions or not. If the committee chose to, we can always give information or feedback, but it's up to the individual areas on what they do with that. And again, knowing we have a new executive director who will be advising, but also that we'll have new people in the position, that next year the VP may choose to change one of those positions to be this instead, based out of their base funding on that side.
Alex.
Point of clarification, earlier the number that I quoted was incorrect. I had looked at the 7,534 from Jazz Educational Network. The real number is $3,910 if it were to be cut in half. Apologize for that.
Eric?
So we are all college students here, and this is going to be a student position. So I don't believe that one person over the other is going to have a higher amount of experience in research of bills than from another person, because we're all students. This is not about hiring a professional person. And I just don't feel that we should be spending money on employment.
Maddie?
I agree with what Eric is saying. Okay, good. I got your name right. For a second, I was like, oh. But even if we did fund half, is 10 hours a week gonna make that big of an impact? That's not very much time, to read through bills, especially if they're 100 pages long.
Shelby?
I'm new to Washington, so I don't know how your state legislature works here. Is it just the winter quarter?
Mm-hmm. That's when it's open.
Okay. That's what I thought, so I'm gonna check.
Alex?
Just a point of clarification, or not point of clarification, sorry. The individual that has been selected for this position has, I think it was, helped run, or not helped run, but helped participate in, I think it was 3 Senate elections. So they have a pretty decent amount of experience as far as somebody, again, professional, non-professional, that's up to interpretation. But in terms of experience with things like policy and current issues, 3 Senate elections is actually fairly substantial, especially at anybody in college's age.
Stephanie?
If I could ask Alex to do some math again, if we could maybe do like.
As a point of clarification, just to remind you all, this discussion period is for the motion at hand in the amount of $39.10. Maddie?
I can amend, right?
Yes.
I'd like to make an amendment to not fund it at all.
There's an amendment on the table for the amount of $0. Is there a second? Eric seconds. Is there any discussion? Shelby?
I feel like we should fund this because the legislature is very complicated, and if there's that large amount of bills coming through, having as many hands on deck, I think, would be a great thing.
Is there any further? Yes, Jeanette?
I'm not in this field. I don't read these things for fun, so I don't know how this goes. But if it's been working in the past for this position, my only question is, what changed? Did it get more complicated? Did our school change something? Like, I'm just not in the field enough at all to understand, so I'm just wondering.
Eric?
And that's where I'm coming from with the original motion, but then agreeing with the amendment is exactly what changed. Why is it more necessary now when our legislature has been complicated for decades? So the amount of bills that come up or don't, or the information presented by them, we as citizens have the ability to research that stuff on our own without being paid. And I just feel, as the Vice President of Legislative Affairs, you took on that job to represent all students, whether you're being paid for it or not.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment at hand? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment of $0?
So this is making the current motion $0 as clarification.
Yes.
Oh, to change the...
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes with 1 abstention, being Alex. Is there any further discussion on the motion at hand in the amount of $0? Stephanie?
I think we should fund a portion of it. I have been in and out of the office because I think they do great work up in the student government. It's good to be involved. And this past legislative season has been difficult with the recent election. And I think what is changed from the past and why they didn't have a position before is because of the views of focusing more on policy for the students as a bigger part of Michael's position. So maybe I can't speak for the last person who had that office, but he might have focused more on different areas, and whereas Michael is focusing more on the actual legislative bills and writings, which in turn will help us. Like Alex said, there's a housing one that's coming up that Michael will need to be versed on to get the right information out to us, because that's something that will affect students in Helensburgh.
Eric?
We've had a divided legislature since, I believe, about 2013, so this isn't a new situation. This is a continuing situation, and the Vice President of Legislative Affairs has existed in previous years, and I believe that there would be communication between previous Vice Presidents of Legislative Affairs and future ones, and so discussions would have happened to say, do we need all these positions, or do we need more? And I believe that we should not fund employees.
Julia?
I know that the stuff in Kittitas County, like Central, the last few years has been accepting more and more students, so there really is like a big housing issue. So there is more stuff in the Ellensburg area that maybe they haven't had to focus on as much in the past, because there is definitely a need for more housing. So that's important to students, because it's getting very expensive to live as a student.
Shelby?
And I think there's a greater need for activism now because of the greater amount of students in the area, and echoing Stephanie's sentiments of what's exactly going on in the national and statewide political climate. But furthermore, every good chief of staff needs his staff members. Michael can't know everything. He needs to be advised on everything that's going on. Michael has a lot of responsibilities being the Vice President of Legislative Affairs. He can't be constantly reading the thousands of bills that are being introduced in the state legislature every day. He needs someone who is on top of it to help him. Michael's awesome, but we're all limited in what we can take on every day.
Eric?
I totally understand that, and I know that Michael is an exceptional person and a very good representative for legislative affairs here in our school. But again, I feel if the need for these positions are there, and we have multiple years of housing issues at this school and other issues about separating the fees from the tuition, this is perennial issues that have existed. And with that being said, those requests should be in base funding. I don't feel that this is worthy of a supplemental request.
Is there any further discussion on the motion at hand being funding this in $0? Seeing none, all those in favor? 5, any opposed? 3, any abstentions? 1. Motion passes in the amount of $0. Is it denied or declined?
However you want to.
Moving on to voting on supplemental funding request 1807, the National Jazz Education Network Conference in the amount of $7,534. Table is open for discussion. Eric?
So one of my questions about this request was the paying of memberships for the students that are going to this conference. I'm a member of organizations, and I have to pay my own fees. Nobody else is going to pay for them. And I feel if you want to participate in the national organization, that you would also be paying for your membership.
I echo your sentiments fully. I don't
Mhm.
think it's necessarily fair for us to pay for a year-long membership for students. Not to say that it's not valuable, but just the sheer amount of students that do have to pay, I don't think that the year-long membership is necessarily an appropriate, even though it is allowable, that it's necessarily an appropriate use for these funds. That being said, I think that the rest of the trip is still very much open for discussion on the amount.
Joey?
And again, I apologize since I was not here. 2 comments. One, you all can make the decision. We have the ability to pay for memberships. We do not have to. Was the question asked whether or not membership cut down on the registration cost? Because we have done that in the past where we will pay for membership if it lowers registry, if the combined cost is lower than the non-membership registration.
No, that was not mentioned to us.
Maddie?
I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, when they were talking about registration, the $75 I think is like the early bird fee anyways.
Lacey?
And I don't think that, did it?
Yes, you're
remembering
kinda
that
correct.
wrong?
Basically, they have to have a Gen membership in order to register.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I don't think it made the cost.
Yeah.
Because everyone would have to.
Maddie?
I've been preaching this all night, but again, with the accountability thing, they haven't contributed anything themselves, and besides, it sounds like most of us are agreeing with not paying for the Gen membership national fee. I think that it would be fair to have them maybe instead of giving them or awarding them $2,000 for food, maybe do half of that, because again, that's a personal fee in my eyes, and that's not a greater good type of thing.
Eric?
So you want to reduce by $2,000?
No, I mean, like, instead of giving them $50 a day, do $25 a day.
So it'd be 1,000.
So it'd be 1,000 instead of 2,000.
Okay, so it'd be $1,000 reduction.
1,000 plus.
Joey?
This is just a general advice piece, is that since it is early in the year, for consistency's sake, if you all do make the decision on things, since we do have a lot of these trips and travel, I would encourage you all to be consistent moving forward in whatever we decide to do, whether it be specifically as it relates to food, since that is one that has some special wording in our guidelines and policies, or with other pieces, if we're specifically looking or expecting groups to be paying for X, Y, Z on their own, that we're making sure we're consistent. So like with the membership, that we're keeping that in mind throughout the rest of the year with other ones.
Eric?
So I have a question for you, Joey. I've read the line about food, and it kind of confuses me a little bit. So its intention, as I understand it, if you're going to an event or something that, and let's say some meals are paid and some meals aren't, you're allowed to get funding for the meals that aren't. But how, I guess as I read it, it's like, is there value to it? That's my confusion on the
There's
rule.
a couple of different things. Meals in regards to travel are sent based on a few things. Being in travel status, so they obviously have to be during the trip.
Okay.
But if they're at a convention and there is meals provided, they cannot claim a meal for that same meal.
But they can claim for meals not provided.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you're going to a conference and it provides a dinner, you can't then get per diem because that's included in your registration.
You can only get it for breakfast and lunch or what have you.
Because those weren't included in your costs already.
Okay. So it's just.
Sorry, point of order. Julia?
I just had a question. I don't remember if we asked or not how many meals were included. Did we ask them? I don't remember if we did. I should
I
have.
don't think we did ask them. I do know that Dallas's meal per diem is over $100 a day, if I remember correctly. So they're asking for a reduced rate already. But I I do not know how many meals are provided.
Eric?
I make a motion that we approve $6,534 for the Gen Club National Jazz Education Network Conference.
There's a motion on the table for 6,534. Is there a second?
Can I ask a point of clarification for Eric? Why you took off?
I would say yes, but we have to have a second first.
Okay.
Motion.
I'll second because I want to move to the discussion portion to find out exactly. I'm sorry.
Alex seconds. Is there any discussion? Stephanie?
Eric, why did you choose to take off $1,000? Is that was that the whole food cost?
That was based on food was $2,000, and that was cutting that in half.
Okay.
Alex?
So so one of the things you had also mentioned was taking off the cost of the memberships, which was $360. So it would be taking off $1,360, which would leave it at $6,174. So I move to amend. Actually, never mind. I take that back.
Maddie?
Just food for thought. I just Googled the Dallas, Texas per diem 2017 in September. September 2017, it says meals and incidentals per diem is $64. Just.
I could
see. Yeah.
Just take that into account. 64 is a lot less than 150 if that's what it actually is.
I would. Oh.
Let's see.
You caught yourself.
I would also like to point out, and this is also not just for this trip, but in general, regardless, for reimbursement purposes, we would never go over any dollar figure. Even if you guys agreed to a certain dollar figure, we still have state regulations that we have to abide by. So, with that $64, I will pull that.
Is there any further discussion on the motion at hand in the amount of $6,534, taking $1,000 off? Maddie?
I would like to make can I amend it? Can I still do that?
Yes.
Okay. So if Google is not lying, and it is only $64, I guess Google is lying.
We're all waiting for me. Sorry.
$142.
Yeah.
No, $64.
That's the 142 is hotel nights.
Okay, so it is $64.
Yeah.
So since they're only going for 4 days, that's only $256, and that would be their personal contribution. I think that we should not pay for their food at all, and not pay for the gen registration at all, which would take off $2,360.
Leave us with a total
$5,174.
I would like to make an amendment.
There's an amendment.
$5,174.
There's an amendment on the table. Is there a second? Jeanette seconds. Is there any discussion on the amendment at hand? In the amount of $5,174.
Great research.
Seeing none. Oh wait, was there a second? I can't remember.
Yes,
Yeah,
Jeanette.
Jeanette.
There was
Seeing
like
none.
three of
All
us.
those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
That's taking the food and membership.
Food and membership. Is there any further discussion on the motion at hand for the amount of $5,174? Jeanette.
I guess just like a point of clarification, or not clarification, but moving forward, I think we're kind of getting into the pattern of like not funding food, and that we should remember this, that when we see others come by, that we have to remember that even if they're asking for $100, we have to be consistent, because that may be $100 per day. You know what I mean? So.
And I would second that sentiment on the consistent, unless there's a strong rationale or reason behind it.
I agree with that. I think that with our budget, the state that it's currently at, and the way that it's continuously going down at the rate that it's going down, we have to draw the line somewhere, and I think that's a very reasonable line to draw. And unfortunately, it does put more hardship on the students, but we also have to take into consideration future requests from future students.
So the hardship is spread out for more students.
I mean, like a little hardship for everyone versus like a lot of hardship for just one group.
Is there any further discussion on the motion at hand? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention. Motion passes in the amount of $5,174. Moving on to section 9, other business communications received. I've not received any communications. Moving on to section 10, public comment second call. Is there any public comment at this time? Just like to remind you guys that our next meeting is next Wednesday here in this room at 5:30. Yes, Stephanie?
Do we have a set date for pictures yet?
Oh.
Oh.
Can we get like a reminder?
Give me a heads up, I'll just bring my camera.
Like a big heads up, like
Yeah.
kind of like.
I haven't scheduled
means-
that
yeah.
because we still need 2 faculty to be appointed to our committee.
Oh, yeah.
Faculty sentence.
I was hoping to get everybody in the go round of pictures, so as soon as we get our 2 faculty members, we'll be setting that up.
So you at least have a little leeway.
Yeah.
It's gonna be next week. You better just
Get your
be
hair
ready.
dyed. No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding. Just kidding.
Any further public comment at this time? Seeing none, moving to section 11 adjournment, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Maddie moves, Adam Alex. Adam seconds, right? Alex seconds. Is there any discussion?
Is that how you spell it these
Yeah,
days?
Adam. Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any
I don't know why I
abstentions?
raised my
Meeting adjourned at 7:51.
Aye.
I thought we were friends. Yeah.